What's up, vaqueros, and welcome back to the channel. Today's video is all about the 725 2.0, also known as the Lockwood 300, but it's basically still the 725. So with this particular video, I'm going to go over 3 unique one-shot kill class setups that are awesome and that have their own unique style. So for one of them, it's going to be a hipfire focused build. The next one is going to be sort of your all-around more balanced build. The next one is going to be a quirky one, which I'll get into in the last part of the video, which I will leave timestamps below in the description for. The first build we'll go over is the overall more balanced build, and this is going to be for good mobility, good range. While not excelling in anything one particular, it's going to be good overall. First, use the X10 V2.0 choke, the 711 Matuzek barrel, the 7mW laser, the high stock mod, and the Buck Pro guard. Now, a few notable things. First of all, with the chokes, the X10 V2.0 choke doesn't give you the tightest spread. That will be the Series 12 choke. That gives you the tightest spread. But the X10 V2.0 choke does give you a tighter spread, but it also gives you a much better boost to your damage range compared to the other chokes. This one's going to give you some pellet spread tightness, but more importantly, it's going to give you a little bit more range without sacrificing a ton of your aim down sight speed. And you can also tune it to give you more of a tight spread and more damage range. And overall, this was the best choke for range, even though I do typically like the Series 12 for more tight, consistent shots because of the pellet spread. This one is also very good and a good middle ground. Then for the barrel, I'm using the 711, not the 812, because even though you're losing about 1 meter to 1.5 meters worth of your one-shot kill range, this one still takes your one-shot kill range from about that 14-meter mark close to that 16-meter mark. So it's a really good boost there, but you're not sacrificing a ton of your mobility, just like with the choke. Then with the lasers, I typically run the 7mW because I don't like having that green hipfire laser show up, and this one also gives you the same sprint to fire speed bonus as the other lasers and lights, the flashlights you can equip. They're all basically the same at 60 frames per second. There might be some small differences. We're talking like less than a frame, so it'd be like less than 16 milliseconds. So they're all pretty much on par with each other. I just like the aim down sight speed boost that you get from the 7mW laser. Then with the stock, I have the high stock mod because that's going to give us the best movement speed and sprint to fire speed boost, as well as aim down sight speed boost out of all of the stocks. Now, if this stock is a little too much for you with the recoil and how much it sways when you're aiming, then you want to use the sweet spot stock instead, as that's going to give you a little bit better stability. It'll allow you to get better shots on target, and it's also going to help with that aim down sight speed. That's the next best stock, and if the no stock option is just too much for you, switch to the sweet spot barrel. Then you want to use the Buck Pro guard, and this is going to help you with your sprint to fire speed bonus because you can actually tune this attachment to give you a better sprint to fire speed along with some more aim down sight speed. So I'll show the tunings on for these attachments, but basically this is going to be the best overall build in my opinion from my experience for just kind of your general shotgunning and your general aggressive playing, but still being able to kind of hold your own and not be super slow with a ton of heavy attachments. Before I move on to the next class, I do want to point out that that small sawed-off barrel, I think it's the 11-inch Bryson Special or whatever it's called, typically not the best option to go for here. I've seen a lot of people use it. It really widens your spread, but more importantly, it really hurts your effective damage range. I mean, your 14-meter one-shot kill, for me in the base barrel, the base 11-inch barrel, took it down to about 6.8 meters. That's more than half. So that is really hurting your range there, and it doesn't seem to give you any more damage, unlike it did in Modern Warfare 2019. You're just kind of doing the same damage overall, just less range. I really don't like it in this game. I'm trying to make it work, but it's a lot harder, so I would stay away from that barrel, to be honest. Next up, we're going to go over a very cool hipfire build, and this one's going to be primarily for hipfiring. Those of you who like to hipfire, this is going to be a good build for you. As you can see, we are using the 812 barrel, and that's going to give you the most range and a tight pellet spread compared to the other barrels, or a tighter spread. And then we're also using the Bryson Series 12 choke. That's going to give you the tightest spread out of all the chokes we have access to. Then we have the point G3P laser for hipfire accuracy, the high stock mod for mobility, because aiming down sights isn't really as important with this particular build since it's so slow. I recommend this just for more getting up in someone's face and hip firing. And then the secret sauce here is using one of the grips like the VX Pineapple, because what this allows you to do is actually run the tuning on it to get a much better hip fire spread. You can basically crank that slider all the way to the right to get a really tight spread. So with all these different attachments kitted out for pellet tightness, your spread is so tight that most of your pellets are probably going to hit as long as your aim is decent on the target, which will make for very consistent one-shot kills. Although, of course, the trade-off is since it's so tight, you have to be a lot more accurate. So, you know, if you're kind of in a pinch and you're kind of just moving left and right really quick, you might miss a shot. You might have some pellets hit the arm if you're a little off and you won't get the 2-shot or 1-shot kill. It can be a little difficult to use, but because it's so tight, if your aim is on point, you will get some absurdly far range 1-shot kills. This is one of those definitely aggressive hipfire builds that I think you guys should try out. Next up, for potentially my favorite build and the most quirky you've probably ever seen for a shotgun, is a recoil focused build where we are actually trying to reduce the recoil. And you might be thinking, it's a shotgun, why the hell would you do that? Well, if you use a 725, or I'm sorry, the Lockwood 300, excuse me, then you'll notice that sometimes the gun just kicks so much when you're aiming or even hip firing, especially with certain attachments like that sawed-off stock. The gun just flies way up, and it actually makes hitting your second shot a bit more troublesome. And I notice that sometimes when I need a second shot, I can't really like hit my second shot as well because the kick is kind of ridiculous. It's not awful, you can control it. It's definitely not the most well-rounded class, but it's super fun and actually ridiculously useful for some reason. And I think, and a lot of it has to do with how you can actually manage to hit your 2 shots a lot more effectively since the recoil is reduced, which means you don't get as good of a 1-shot potential, but your 2-shot potential, we're talking 24, 25 meters if you hit your shots, is a lot easier to do than just with the other barrels and the other setups. So with this setup, we're using the Bryson Series 12 choke. That is going to give us the most tight pellet spread we want with a little bit of range, not as much as the V2 choke, but the best and tight hip fire and aim down sight spread we need. Then we have the Matsuzek Inferno barrel, and that's really where the secret is to this build, is we're going to get that nice recoil control from this barrel. Plus it looks badass. This is like the Olympia from Black Ops 1. It looks so cool. Then we have the 7mm laser for, again, aim down sight speed with a little bit of some sprint to fire speed. Then we have the Cronin Marshall stock, and that's going to help with recoil control. And then last we have the Buck Pro Guard that we used before. And for a lot of these, the tuning is going to be primarily on recoil steadiness, damage range. And then for the Cronin Marshall stock, we're going to be focused on aim down sight speed and aiming stability. And you'll see on screen all the tunings for that. But this build is surprisingly useful, and more importantly, it looks really cool. Well, all jokes aside, it has a great 2-shot range, and it's going to make it a lot easier for follow-up shots. And I don't know why it works so well, but it does. And I feel like I have a lot more control over this build, even though it's slightly slower when it comes to aiming, even though it doesn't have as much range as the others. It's still really good. I mean, you're still talking 14 to 15 meter for your 1-shot, aim down sights, and then hit your 2 shots, and you can get some ridiculously far 2-shot kills. Just try it and just let me know how it goes for you. But guys, that is going to be it for this video. I hope you learned something from it. I'm curious to know, what are your thoughts on these builds? What do you think of that recoil build I made? I mean, is it actually kind of viable, or is it just poopy and stick with a more balanced one? So let me know down in the comments below. And with all that being said, guys, I will see you in the next video.
Confirm that one. UAV is bingo fuel. RTB at this time. AIA confirmed. UAV ready to deploy.